Hi, everyone. Welcome today. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Beth Cohen-King, and I'm the Marketing Director at Margolis Bloom. Margolis Bloom works with our clients to find the best estate planning or elder law solution for each client's unique situation and goals. And we bring to this effort over 30 years of experience and a commitment to providing the highest level of personalized service. So today our presentation, as you can see on the screen, is Seniors, Scams, and Identity Theft. This is given by Steven J.J. Weisman. And just a little background on Steve, because we're really lucky to have him here today. He's really a true leading expert on scams. So he is of counsel to Margolis Bloom, and he focuses his practice on estate planning, probate, and identity theft scams. He's also a senior lecturer at Bentley College. Steve has appeared as an expert on scams on the Dr. Phil Show, CNN, Fox, and NBC, and now our little webinar today. But he's also been a frequent contributor to Nesson. As well as speaking on many TV shows, he's also the author of many books, and here's a few: A Guide to Elder Planning, 50 Ways to Protect Your Identity and Your Credit, 50 Ways to Protect Your Identity in a Digital Age, Boomer or Bust, The Truth About Avoiding Scams, The Truth About Buying Annuities, and The Truth About Protecting Your IRAs and 401ks. So we're very excited. This definitely, he's definitely an expert on all of this. And if you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box on the control panel on the right side of your computer. And we're going to have time for questions at the end. And additionally, if for some reason you need to jump off, we are recording the presentation. And I want to just tell you a couple of other things. In the handouts section, if you can see that on the right side, if you drop down, there's a really helpful website resource that Steve put together. So you can download it there. We will also have it in follow-up emails, and it will be available on our website. So with that, Steve, I think I'm going to let you take it away.
Terrific.
Oh, there's us.
There we are. Yeah, we're going to be discussing scams, identity theft, how they apply to seniors. My job is going to be to talk to you for about 40 minutes. We'll take some questions. Your job is going to be to listen. If you finish your job before I finish mine, you let me know. Let's go to the next slide. First of all, things aren't as bad as you think. They're far worse. According to a congressional study, seniors are only 12% of the population, but 30% of the scam victims. And according to the Senate Special Committee on Aging, seniors are scammed out of about $2.9 billion a year. But once again, it's probably worse than that because the figures are most likely larger. Federal government has reported $40 billion worth of scams from people over the phone, and elderly people do constitute the vast majority of fraud victims. And this is something that is quite concerning because the reporting rate as far as seniors who are victimized by scams isn't as high as those for others. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay, I just want to jump in for a second. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear okay and you're not hearing an echo. So if you can just type into the chat panel before we move forward, just a simple yes, the audio, yes, it's working. Let's see. I'm just gonna, let's see here. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to.
Not a problem.
Make sure that you can hear everything okay. I'm not getting any responses, so I'm going to assume that we're good. But if you need to, the chat panel, I'm looking at it. Just type yes, we're all good. If not, we'll keep moving forward. Okay.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So why are seniors so vulnerable? Well, Willie Sutton, the famous bank robber, was once asked why he robbed banks. And he said, because that's where the money is. And so it is with many seniors. Seniors may be more trusting, less apt to complain. And again, older people specifically are less likely to report their victimization, even acknowledging it. And this is something there have been a number of studies on. But there's more to that. And let's go to the next slide. There actually are some studies. There was a recent study at Cornell University published in the Journals of Gerontology that concluded that naturally occurring changes in our brains as we age make us vulnerable to financial exploitation. And these changes are in parts of the brain that alert us when facing a risky situation, as well as another part of the brain that controls the ability to read social cues. And this makes it easier for scammers to swindle older people. And there was a previous study done at the University of Iowa that found changes in another part of the brain during aging, and a part of the brain that controls belief and doubt and makes us less skeptical and therefore more likely to become victims. So there really is a physiological part of this too. But we shouldn't be too hard on seniors, because scam artists, the only criminals we refer to as artists, have a knowledge of psychology that Freud would have envied. So let's go to the next. So who's threatening us? You know, your enemies are everywhere from around the world to around the corner. They're sophisticated hackers. They're unsophisticated people using technology they purchase online in a part of the internet we call the dark web, where scammers buy and sell things. Interpol once estimated that there were only about 100 computer criminal geniuses, but what they do is they sell their wares to less sophisticated criminals online. A lot of scams are perpetrated by phone, where scammers can get numbers for seniors, including the famous Jamaica lottery scam. This is something where scammers in Jamaica have managed to get lists of phone calls of Americans, and they use these to prey upon us. There are also major call centers in India, family givers, caregivers, and affinity fraud. This is one of the big areas of fraud. It's we trust people who are like us. And who's the us? Well, it depends how you may be identifying. But this is a real problem, because there are scammers that take advantage of that and will scam people who trust them the most. Let's go to the next slide. So just earlier this past year, the Justice Department did a major sweep of elder fraud cases with more than 250 defendants around the globe who had victimized more than 1 million Americans, most of them elderly. And there were all kinds of scams that they found. They found them from telemarketing scams, investment fraud, identity theft, theft by guardians. A number of these cases actually involved transnational criminal organizations that defrauded hundreds of thousands of elderly victims. So it's a large area of scams. Let's go to the next slide. So we're going to look at some of these, and one of the most prominent is lottery scams. Callers convince seniors that they've just won a lottery. I don't know how many of you have won a lottery. It's hard to win a lottery. It's really hard to win a lottery that you haven't entered. But what happens is people get convinced by this. And statistically, we show that older people become more susceptible to these scams. A lot of these scams, we hear about Jamaica. Dominican Republic also is big in this. And here's the key thing. Like a lot of good scams, there may be just a bit of a kernel of truth to them. And so that kernel of truth is that they told you, yes, you've won this lottery, but you have to pay income taxes, or you have to pay administrative fees. Now, here's the key thing here. Yes, income taxes are owed on lottery winnings. However, the lottery never collects those taxes from you. They either deduct it, like you see with Powerball and Megabucks and other state-sponsored lotteries, or they give you the money and you're responsible yourself for paying it. They never collect the taxes. And no legitimate lottery ever asks you to pay administrative fees. So whenever the red flags, whenever your family member or yourself are told you've won a lottery you haven't entered, no, you didn't win, and when they start asking for fees, you know it's a scam. Let's go to the next. The infamous grandparent scam. This is one where often seniors will get a call in the middle of the night, quite often, from the grandchild. Or it appears to be the grandchild. It's actually a scammer posing as the grandchild. And there may be some kind of a health emergency. There may have been an arrest, something where monies need to be wired or sent, or a credit card, or even gift cards, quick information. And you may wonder, how do they, again, find out to target these grandparents? And, here again, there was a cartoon years ago called Pogo, and Pogo had a one line I always remember. It was, "We have met the enemy and he is us." Too often we will put too much information out there. Maybe it's in social media. Maybe there's a picture on social media and it identifies us. And maybe there's a picture identifying the grandparent as Nana. And so when the call comes in from Nana and the name of the grandchild, it seems legitimate. The other thing is, the scammers will often peruse obituaries, and they will look to see the names of grandchildren in there, and they will call the bereaving widow or widower posing as the grandchild. And I think the lesson here is not only to be wary of these kinds of calls, but don't put so much information such as names into the obituaries. The bad guys are always there looking. Let's go to the next slide. This one, romance scams, of course, it was in the news with recently it being Valentine's Day. And in fact, romance scams have quadrupled in just the last 3 years. And according to the Federal Trade Commission, Americans lost about $143 million to romance scams in the last few years. Typical thing here is it does prey upon the elderly quite often more than younger people. And the elderly people lose more money to this. The average loss to the romance scam was only $2,600. I shouldn't say only, but was $2,600. But for people over 70, it was $10,000. The issue here is there are all kinds of different types of online dating sites. There are also just regular social media. Phony profiles are put up with phony pictures. And one of the things you can sometimes do is there are websites you can use to see if a picture that you received is appearing anywhere else on the internet, and you can suddenly see that somebody who claims to be someone is not who they claim. There was a big instance where a lot of the profile pictures were taken from a modeling agency, Hawaiian Tropics, and the model is the same. It preys upon vulnerable people. Often maybe you've had some kind of personal loss or going through some stress. And they quickly establish a relationship. And this relationship they establish leads to, there's an emergency and I need some money. And people, they provide that money and they wire it. So the big thing here is my motto, trust me, you can't trust anyone. You've got to be very, very careful with online social media and online dating sites, particularly when someone really seems to fall in love too fast, as well as ask for money. Let's go to the next slide. This is a huge one. IRS imposter scams, and here you may get a call on the phone, and it's from the IRS. And as a matter of fact, you may look at your phone, and the caller ID says it is the IRS. Well, there's a very simple technique the fraudsters used called spoofing, and through spoofing, the scammers are able to make it appear that the call is coming from wherever they want it to. So there's a nice, easy way. Again, you have the scammers with, they're so adept at being convincing. And, anytime you're hearing from the IRS, it seems to be scary. So they'll say for whatever reason that you owe back taxes, you're going to get arrested. So how do you know if it's the IRS calling? How do you know if it's the IRS texting? How do you know if it's the IRS on your email? And the answer is, it's easy. The IRS doesn't initiate contact with you by phone, by text, or by email. They only send out good old regular snail mail. So when you get a contact in these fashions, you can ignore it. The other thing is, and it's kind of sad the IRS actually has had to publicize this fact, they don't take gift cards. Gift cards are a frequent way that scammers look for payments, and wiring money and gift cards are ways that money can be transferred in value fast and without much chance of getting the money back. So for IRS imposters, it's scary, but it is easy to combat. Let's go to the next slide. This one's guardian, the people we trust, and guardian schemes where guardians may siphon off the senior's financial resources. Just this past month, a home health aide was arraigned in the Natick District Court on charges stemming from what's believed to be thefts of $500 every other day through the victim's ATM card for a total of $60,000. So people who are working for you at home health aides, people who are working with you and your family members as guardians. These are the people you have to be really, really wary of. Now, fortunately, we have some new laws in this regard, and one of them is called the Senior Safe Act. And the Senior Safe Act, it allows financial institutions like banks, credit unions, investment advisors, and brokers to report suspected fraud to law enforcement. Before, a lot of these institutions were afraid of doing this because they were afraid that they might be sued. But now this law enables these institutions to do this, to report it when there appears to be some kind of financial impropriety or something putting them on the alert, and without fear of lawsuit. There's also regulations from FINRA, FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. Now, this is an independent regulator of securities firms, brokers, and others. And they now have rules that a client can request what's called a trusted contact. And this can be a family member, a lawyer, an accountant. And in this case, when the broker feels that there is something that doesn't seem right, they can contact that trusted contact. And in addition, this new FINRA regulation allows brokers to place a hold on withdrawals from the account of a client when they have reason to believe there is some kind of financial exploitation. And this initial hold can go 15 business days, although it can even be extended 10 days more than that. So new laws are helping us, particularly as far as financial exploitation. But frankly, the best place to find a helping hand is still going to be at the end of your own arm. And if you've got an elderly family member who is undergoing perhaps a decline in mental acuity, you want to do things like you want to monitor their bank accounts. You want to perhaps limit access to funds, set spending limits, monitor their mail, monitor their credit cards. And there are a couple of And we have these on the important websites, but there are a couple of companies that that help with this. One is TrueLink. They have a TrueLink prepaid Visa card, and this acts like a regular prepaid Visa or ATM card, and it can be registered in the elderly person's name, used to pay anyone who accepts Visa debit cards. But what you can do is it also can prevent certain types of people from having access to it. And it will have a personalized fraud blocker. So it can disallow purchases from certain merchants. So let's say your mother is spending too much money on magazine subscriptions or the home shopping channel. You can flag those vendors. This account also will allow to be set up spending limits or prevent ATM cash withdrawals. And you can also have text alerts or email alerts for suspicious activity. And so the great thing here is the goal of the card is to strike a better balance between the autonomy and security that we have and respect for aging adults, let them keep some of their dignity, and at the same time be able to be looking over their shoulder and helping them out with financial matters. And there's another company which have in the important websites called EverSafe. EverSafe will monitor bank and investment accounts, credit cards, credit data for you. They examine the historical financial behavior to establish a personal profile, and then analyze that daily. So if there is something that doesn't meet the pattern, something that's erratic, unusual withdrawals, missing deposits, irregular investment activity, EverSafe will alert you and alert your, again, trusted advocate. So these are terrific, terrific tools that you can use to help balance maintaining the dignity of the senior and still being able to prevent them from being scammed. Let's go to the next slide. Social Security scams are quite prominent, and one of them is with COLAs, cost of living adjustments. It was recently we got one, and here what the scam will call, they will pretend that they're from the Social Security Administration. Again, by spoofing, it'll make it look like the call is from Social Security, even though it is not. And they'll tell you that you have to register in order to get your COLA. You don't have to register to get your COLA. And indeed, there are a lot of scams where calls will come through. They'll appear to be coming from Social Security, and under every kind of a pretense, ask the senior for their Social Security number, and you turn it over. That is the key to identity theft. Now, there's a great tool that Social Security has. I use this myself, and frankly, everyone should, even if you're not even getting Social Security. And it's called My Social Security Account. It allows you to set up a personal online account with the Social Security Administration. It allows you to view your earnings history, estimates of benefits, manage your benefits online, including changing your address or even starting or changing the direct electronic deposits of your check into a bank account you can designate. This is where the problem has come in, because what's happened is scammers are setting up My Social Security accounts for people who are receiving Social Security who have not set one up, and then they change where the check is to go. So my advice here is if you don't have one of these accounts, set it up. Set it up before the bad guys do. Let's go to the next. Medicare. Again, any kind of scam in big programs, the bad guys will try and take advantage of. And Medicare was one of the last institutions to use the Social Security number. It was just this past year and just recently, in the past few months, that Medicare finished its switch over to new random numbered cards. But you can still use your old card until next year. So again, you'll see the repeated pattern. You'll get a spoofed call. It appears to be coming from Medicare. They're asking for your old Medicare number, which is your Social Security number. Frankly, even though you still can use the old number until next January, I really think the thing to do is to tell people to switch over to the new number. Everyone should have received it by now. And here again, in each year, you have the open enrollment period, and that's a prime time for scammers. The scammers will call up. They'll be posing as some Medicare provider or prescription drug provider. You just can't trust anyone that calls you on the phone that you haven't called, because it can always be a scammer. So you've got to do your own research and not give out personal information there. Let's go to the next slide. Charities. Here again, there are all kinds of phony charities. And an interesting thing is, even if you're on the federal do not call list, and we have the site to go for that on the handout, even if you're on the federal do not call list, charities are allowed to call you. But once again, you can't tell whether indeed it's a legitimate charity or not. So there's a great website that I have on the handout. It's charitynavigator.org. This website will tell you a couple of things. One is this a legitimate charity that's contacting you? And it can be contacting you online, on the phone, whatever. Second, and this is, I think, just as interesting, it can tell you how much of what you contribute goes towards the charitable purposes and how much toward their administrative fees, their salaries, and their costs. So charitynavigator.org, a great place to go before you make any kind of investment, charitable donations. Let's go to the next. Investment scams across the board. There are so many. And, one of the things is we look back to a lot of smart people fall for scams, particularly investment scams. And one of the things is we invest in things we don't know. And no one should ever invest in something they don't understand. Bernie Madoff actually had the nerve to say that blame his own victims, say it was their own fault. Anyone who had looked into what he was doing would have found that it was impossible to do. And so that's a good place to start to avoid it. And again, Madoff's Ponzi scam, named after Charles Ponzi. The idea is, and it's simple and it's worked for more than 100 years, the idea is that the newer investors, their money comes in and is used to pay the earlier investors. So it looks like the scam is like the investment is legitimate when indeed it's a scam. By the way, we may think that Charles Ponzi invented the Ponzi scam, but he didn't. It was actually started in 1879 in Boston by a woman named Sarah Howe, who started the Ladies Deposit Company. She promised returns to her customers, only women, of 8% per month, and it was all a Ponzi scam. She got caught. She went to jail. She came out of jail and immediately started the Women's Bank, offering 7% per month. And she actually was caught again and back in. But the thing here is, you have to understand your investments. You don't invest in things you don't understand. The Forex scam. Some of you maybe go, what is Forex? And if you have to ask, you shouldn't be investing. Forex is foreign exchanges. And in fact, it is a complicated kind of investment, but people shouldn't be investing in it unless they really know what they're doing. Variable annuities is something that's very interesting, and this is because it is the only legitimate investment that every year turns up on the top 10 scam list. And how is that possible? And it's possible because annuities, variable annuities, are quite complicated and may have often a lot of surrender fees and other fees that make them not an appropriate investment for seniors, although they may be for younger people. So once again, you've got to have people that you trust. Check them out, because trust me, you can't trust anyone. Never invest in anything that you don't understand. And the affinity fraud, it worked with Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff preyed a great deal upon Jewish investors who trusted him because he was Jewish. There have been African-American churches that were scammed by African-Americans within the church. There have been every kind of ethnic group. They've been scammed by the people they trust who are like them. Let's move on to the next. Robocalls. These are the computer calls, computer automated calls you get, and we all get them. And the thing is with these, how do you tell when it's a legal call or not? Frankly, they are all illegal when it comes to doing any kind of telemarketing or business purposes. So anytime you get these, you should just ignore them. But they work. They really work. And this is, from Rachel from Card Services, who's going to be offering you a new rate for your credit card. So here's the thing. We do have on that handout a number of different sources you can use to avoid robocalls. I use one called Nomo Robo, and this is a problem that's only going to continue to increase. So I urge people, and particularly if you've got seniors in your family, have them use one of these services. Let's go to the next. Tech support scams are huge. A lot of them are originating in India, which is a call center hub for both legitimate and illegitimate calls like IRS imposter. And as a matter of fact, the Federal Trade Commission is just sending refunds to people who are victims of a tech support scam of a company, Troth Solutions. And here's how they work. You get a call, a text message, an email, or a pop-up on your computer screen telling you there's a problem. They give you an 800 number to call or a link to click on, and they may say that they're from Microsoft. They may say that they're from Apple, but that they want remote access to your computer and they can do a scan and find out if there's a problem. Well, they always find a problem, and the thing is, no, Apple does not contact you in this fashion to tell you there's a problem. Microsoft doesn't do this. No legitimate company does. So the thing to do when you get one of these tech supports that pop up like this is just ignore it. Let's go to the next. You know, we're certainly aware of so many of the scams that come to us in our computers and the importance of having unique passwords and all of this. But now it's even bigger with the Internet of Things, which is the technology by which devices are connected and controlled over the Internet. And it can be your refrigerator, your coffee maker, your smart TV, your microwave oven, all of these things. And the big thing here is they come with a default password. You need to change these. Let's go on. And well, actually, before we go on, another thing is routers. The Federal Trade Commission just issued a warning about our routers. Now, routers are the networking devices that transfers data between our computer and the devices and the Internet. They can become quite vulnerable. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you update your router. You have a good new password. Don't use the default, and update your router all the time. Again, on the important websites, we've got the websites for the various routers. You also want to have strong passwords, strong security questions. You know, you have to have a unique password for every one of your accounts. And there are password managers that can help you protect these, but there's another easy way you can do it. And that is take a phrase. Because if you got a word in the dictionary as your password, it's hackable. So take a phrase like, I don't like passwords. It has capital letters, small letters, an apostrophe. Add a couple of exclamation points at the end, you get a strong password. Use that as your base. So your Amazon password can be, I don't like passwords, 2 exclamation points, and an AMA. And this way, you can have a unique password for each account, which is important because with so many data breaches, your passwords are out there. The other thing I want to mention is security questions. You know, if you can't remember your password, all you have to do is answer a security question. Well, this is how Sarah Palin's email got taken over. Someone just answered the security question, which was, where did she meet her husband? And it was at Wasilla High School. They just went to Wikipedia. My bank has a question, what's my mother's maiden name? Now, that may seem like a horrible security question, but it isn't. You don't have to give a legitimate answer. So your mother's maiden name can be fire truck. So you could still have a strong security question, and it's going to be a silly enough answer that you can remember, and yet no one's going to be able to find that information online. Let's go to the next. Running through a lot of topics here. Identity theft. #1 consumer fraud in America by far. Costs $10 billion more than all other property crimes combined. And it can be income tax identity theft, where someone files a income tax return using your social security number and a counterfeit W-2 before you get a chance to do so. The idea is file your return first. File it before the bad guys get a chance to. By the way, the news is not all bad. Gang violence has gone down in Tampa, Florida, as the gangs have migrated into income tax identity theft rather than violent crime. And identity theft will also hit people after they pass away. It is important to notify the credit bureaus after a death so that the identity is not exploited by identity theft at that time. Let's go to the next one. Medical identity theft is a huge problem and a type of identity theft that actually it can be deadly. And what happens is someone gets access to your medical insurance. They use that medical insurance and their medical records get interspersed with your medical records. The problem with this is you find out you become a victim of medical identity theft. You ask to have the incorrect information taken off your medical records and are told that the HIPAA privacy laws don't allow this, that the only thing you can do, it violates the privacy rights of the criminal, the only thing you can do is have a notation in there. The big thing with medical identity theft, protect your Medicare card, your insurance card, don't let that number get out, and always check your explanation of benefits. All too often, what many of us do is just look at the bottom right-hand corner when we get one that comes in, and it says we don't owe anything. Well, check the whole bill to make sure no one's accessing it. Let's go to the next. Data breaches are a huge problem. Data, no matter what you're doing, you're only as safe as the places that have your information with the weakest security. And this was exposed at Equifax when 149 million people, including myself, had our social security numbers and all of our other personal information released and in the hands of criminals. This is another reason why I emphasize don't use the same password, because what if you've got your password for Amazon and it gets hacked? If it's the same password as at your bank, you've got a problem. Let's go to the next. Biggest thing you can do is to protect yourself from identity theft is freeze your credit. And we have the where you go to freeze your credit. It's actually pretty simple to do now. In the wake of the Equifax data breach, it is now can be done for free, where you freeze and unfreeze your credit. Everyone should do it. You can also do it for kids. We also have, along with the 3 major credit reporting bureaus, NCTUE. What is that? That's an exclusive credit bureau that is used only for mobile phone services, but you still want to freeze your credit there. You want to use a strong, unique password. You want to use dual-factor authentication. That is where if you're accessing your account, and here it's not a pain in the neck, but instead of just your password, they will send a notification to your phone so that you insert a one-time code. Not as bad as you think, because a lot of times you don't need the dual-factor authentication and it won't come into play unless you're accessing an account from something other than your usual computer or phone. I mentioned the nonsensical security questions. Also, install and always keep updated your security software. One of the horrible lessons from Equifax was Equifax got exploited by a vulnerability in a software for which a patch had been issued months before. Don't do that. You want to, whenever there's new updates, security patches, install those on all of your devices. Don't click on links. This is where they call them, it's spear phishing. You'll get an email or a text message to lure you into clicking on a link in there. It downloads malware, maybe ransomware, locking up your computer. It may be keystroke logging malware to steal your identity. Don't click on those links. Let's go to the next slide. Trust me, you can't trust anyone, and this is the lesson here. If it looks like these are a lot of things that are difficult to do, and what do we want you to do? To use dual-factor authentication. We want you to use a shredder. We want you to use a credit card, not a debit card, because you don't get the same protection from a debit card you do from a credit card. You want to use credit monitoring services. Don't give out your social security number. Monitor all of your accounts. Seems like a lot of stuff. Before I started teaching at Bentley University, I taught at Walpole. I taught in the state prison system, and I had a student who was serving 2 consecutive life sentences. And I said, "Oh, I'm curious about that, because what that means is when he died, he would start serving his second life sentence." I said, "How's that work?" And he said, "I wanted to know too. When I got sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, I yelled up at the judge, 'How do you expect me to do that?' And the judge said, 'Just do the best you can.'" So ultimately, it comes down to we do the best we can. And you can, and there are simple steps that you can take that will protect you. And like I mentioned on the important websites, you'll find things for router updates, for credit freezes, for opting out of credit card offers, for getting your My Social Security account, for apps to stop robocalls, a link to TrueLink, EverSafe, and my blog, scamicide.com, where each day we have updates on the latest scams and identity theft schemes.
Thank you so much, Steve. So as he mentions, if you look in the middle of the screen, you'll see his blog site, which is great. If you haven't heard of it, you should definitely check it out. Lots of great information there. This is, a very complex and actually really scary for all of us. So thank you, Steve, for highlighting some of the ways that we can begin to protect ourselves. And again, I want to mention the list of websites that we've talked about a lot. It's in the handout section. If you look on your control panel, you can download it right from there. It's safe, promise. And we will also, wait, don't trust me, but no, it is. And we will also include it in follow-up emails with the recording. I know there's a lot of information here, so if you want to watch the recording again, and please feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions, and we'll get back to you. And you can respond to the email, and we will go from there. So let's see if I can see if there's questions here. Well, yes. So I can send out slides. I can send out a PDF of the slides, and then let's see what else. This is not going to be repeated, but it is recorded, so you can watch it again. And then, is there any other questions right now? Let's see. Okay, so look in the handout. Somebody's saying they're unable to find the link to the handout. The handout, you just have to look in the control panel. If you can't find it, just email me bck@margolis.com, and I'll send it from there. But it's in a section called handouts, and you just have to click on the triangle. It will drop down, and then you'll see the PDF is called Important Websites M&B PDF. Are there any other questions? Okay, let's see. When you receive a scam call or email, can you report it somewhere?
Yes, you can. You can report it to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, who does investigations about this. You can also report it to your phone carrier. So it is those are good things to do.
Okay, and I think we maybe there was so much information and you answered all the questions. There aren't any more questions. Oh, here, wait. Yeah, the slide deck will not be there. I have to put that together. Someone's asking in the handout section. The slides aren't there. That's a something separate I'll have to put together. So again, email me bck@margolis.com. Okay. Does blocking spoof calls work? Does blocking spoof calls work?
Is that another robocall, anti-robo? I'm not familiar with that particular service. There's a number of different ones, and actually, what I would suggest is go to scamicide.com, and you can input where it asks you for scams. Put robocalls, and it will come up a scams of the day that lists all of the different types of anti-robocalls software and programs from the phone companies as well as private companies. I use Nomo Robo, which actually won a contest that was set up by the Federal Trade Commission to find a way to combat robocalls.
Oh, wait, sorry, he's clarifying. I mean, can you block calls that are spoofed?
No, not unless you. Yeah, the problem is you don't know it's a spoofed call when it comes in.
Okay. All right. I think that is all that I'm seeing. I also want to mention one other thing. Harry Margolis, who's the co-managing partner of Margolis and Bloom, Harry and Steve did a podcast on similar related topics. We haven't released it yet, but look out for it in March, April, and that will be available on iTunes. So there's even more conversation about it. So I just want to mention that as well. So I think that's all the time we've got for today. If you do have follow-up questions, again, please feel free to reach out. We will get back to you. And with that, enjoy your day and stay safe. Thanks, Steve.